Hello, everyone. Happy Halloween. Today's date is October 30th, 31st, 2025. And this is Tribute Chiavello, as always. I'm coming to you from Washington, D.C. And happy Halloween again. And today I want to talk to you about what I believe are the top five horror films from Italy. The top five horror films from Italy. So tonight, after you give out the candy to all the kids that come by your house, you want to sit back and watch maybe one or more horror films. You can maybe utilize this list as a means to pick your favorite film to watch from Italy. Almost all these films are dubbed, so you'll have no problem understanding what's going on. Some of you may be familiar with these films if you're horror fans. And look, folks, these films are over the top. Italian horror films are not for the squeamish and not for the faint of heart. If you didn't like the era of the 80s slashers, well, then probably you don't want to watch any of the films I have on this list. However, if you're like me and you adored the 80s horror period, this is a great group of films to watch for Halloween. This is all based, by the way, on a book that I wrote, a fun book that I enjoyed a lot writing, which was the Italian Horror Cinema, the most influential horror films from Italy. And this book was about, and I'll have links to it, was just about how Italy influenced the genre. And it did so because of of where they were in the filmmaking world. And what I mean by that was Italy was really number three in filmmaking. They were making they were most famous for their art house films, the Italian neorealism films that they made, but they were making a number of films in all sorts of genres. But you would see the United States was number one, England was number two. So if Italy was number three, they had to come up with unique ideas, unique ways to make movies in order to move their films to the audiences, move their films near to the top of the heap. They were popular in Italy. They were popular in other places here in the United States, of course. They're very popular also in Central and South America. But in order to get themselves out in the horror genre, they had to come up with new plots, new techniques of making films, new special effects, and a number of things. And so they tried to push the envelope also more than what you'd see here in America and the United States. And so a lot of these films are very influential. So among these films that I researched and wrote about, I wanted to tell you what I believe are the top five that you could go see. The top five films here, horror films that I thought were just, enjoyable for their horror spectacle. Sometimes the plots are good, sometimes not. Sometimes the movies really aren't that good either, but just the spectacle of horror, the graphics, the costumes, the designs, the makeup, really puts these films over the top. So, with that being said, let's give you the list of what I believe are the top five horror films from Italy. So, let's go with number five. Number five is Zombie 2 by Lucio Fulci. Now, Lucio Fulci is one of the three top figures of Italian horror. And he came late in the game, basically. He had made a number of films, maybe 30 or 40 films, before he got into the horror genre. The other two figures that are ahead of him, I think, would be Mario Bava and Dario Argento in the horror and the horror genre. Well, here's what's interesting about Zombie 2. The Zombie 2, I'll give you some background of it. Fulci was not the original person to direct this film. The producers eventually chose him. And what had happened at this time, this late 70s, Italy, all the money ran out. And what I mean by that was that Italian cinema was very successful, made a number of films. They made it cheap in a variety of genres, cheaper than what you can make it here in the United States. And then when they were re-released here in the United States, a number of films made a lot of money for the producers. And so what did the producers do when they had all this money? Well, they didn't reinvest it in Italian films. They left for the United States, left for Hollywood. So almost overnight, all the money that you had to invest in films disappeared, and it went overseas to the United States. So a lot of Italian filmmakers and the cinema industry itself there in Italy, they didn't know where to go. They didn't know what to do in order to try and make films to make money with what little they had left over. Well, enter Fulci. Fulci conceived the idea really of just making horror films very gory, making it graphic, very violent, and just relying on the makeup artists and the latest technology to really bring all the gore, the violence, the lacerations, the body horror that he could to the screen. And this is what he did. He had originally been a doctor. He actually went to medical school at one point in time, left, and became a filmmaker. And his reputation is Lucio Fulci, the king of gore. He was just his films were loaded with gory scenes in the horror genre. Possibly some of that came about because of his knowledge of anatomy and his knowledge of medical of needs and stuff they learned in medical school. So that came about it. And people will look at his films and they'll try to figure out the symbolism and the themes, the artistry of it all. And I think you can do that because and he was a man who had suffered greatly. He was married, his wife committed suicide, and that affected him. And so people will try to delve into his films for that purpose. I never really got that too much from him. What I got really was just the incredible, audacious spectacle of his gore that he brings to it. It's a festival of gore, and that's what he's all about, really. He's made some really good films, and I would recommend some other films that he made. But really, for horror, it's just over the top. He's just wild in his making of films that are just very, very gory and creative violence. Zombie 2 came out in 1979. It was released here in the United States. He had a number of people working with him. Gianetta De Grossi, Maurizio Trani, they did the makeup artistry. And when you see the film, you understand how effective they were. Very creative in the area of special effects. Giovanni Corridori and De Rossi, they came up together with just some very creative ways of killing people and everything else. The Zombie 2 is, as the story would imply, is about zombies on an island in the Caribbean. There's a doctor there and his wife, and they're visited by their daughter, and she brings a person with them to find out what's going on, and he's trying to figure out a way to stop corpses from reanimating on the island. Apparently, it goes back to a voodoo curse, and they're there, and these people are coming out of the grave to attack them and to eat them. And this was based on Night of the Living Dead and Day of the Dead and Dawn of the Dead by George Romero. And what happened was the film, George Romero's Dawn of the Dead, was released in Italy under a different title called Zombie. Now, the way Italy's copyright laws are, you can make a sequel to a movie that's totally unrelated to the original without the producers of the original giving you an okay to do it. And this is what they did with Zombie. They called it Zombie 2. It's totally unrelated to what George Romero did. But this is a way to get people to come and see it. And so this is the movie they made. Over-the-top violence, over-the-top gore. And what makes this on the top 5 list, really, is what you saw with Frankenstein, the original, the Jack Pierce makeup, the face. The face is what sells it, and the face here is the face of the zombie that comes out of the grave. A disgusting sight, but nevertheless very memorable. And that was the makeup artists really captured the horrific figure, and that is the face of zombies today. Not what you see from George Romero's Dawn of the Dead and Night of the Living Dead, not what you see from The Walking Dead, even the TV series on AMC. It's this face that was created by Lucio Fulci in Zombie 2. So this is why I think it's number 5 on my list of the top 5 Italian horror films. So number 5 is Lucio Fulci's Zombie 2. So now we're going to go to number 4. And number 4 is A Bay of Blood by Mario Bava. A Bay of Blood by Mario Bava. Now let me tell you something about this film. This is one of the most influential horror films ever. This is the template for the slasher film. I don't care what anybody says. They will say it's Silent Night, Deadly Night. They'll say Black Christmas, maybe. The slasher film that came out in 1974. They may go all the way back to Psycho, Alfred Hitchcock's masterpiece from 1961. But this is the film, I believe, that set the template, that showed what you can do with the slasher genre. And basically, it's just one scene, really, one part of the film, part of a broader storyline. This is just one section of it. And basically, it's a group of teenagers, right? They spend the night in the forest. There's lots of sex and drugs. They're having a good time. Teenagers might be maybe a little bit older than teenagers, maybe 20-something. They actually sneak into a home. The home doesn't belong to them. They're going to hang out there anyway. It's by this, it's near the beach, and so a watery place. And they're getting killed. They're going to get killed one by one by this maniac, and using weapons, sharp instruments, kills them. And there's a creative kills, and they're getting killed while they're skinny dipping in the water, while they're having sex, doing something else. And there's a scene there when you see it with one of the people, with the couple getting killed. It's an exact Friday the 13th that came out in 1980. Is an exact copy of that scene. That's what it is. So this is what it's all about. The idea that you can have teenagers, 20-somethings, whatever, young people there, either in the forest, in the woods, near a beach, hanging out with each other, and they get killed by these monstrous figures. And that was the setup for the slasher genre that took over the 1980s and the late 70s, and they got this all the way from Bay of Blood. I'm convinced of that. You can see just the whole concept there. A Bay of Blood, by the way, was originally titled in Italy called Ecologia del Delitto, and it was about a couple that wanted to save this area, this this lake or lagoon that was there, and from development. And this is why they kill everybody. And so it just so happens those kids are at the wrong place at the wrong time, and this is why they're killed. So that what ended up being the template of the slasher genre was just a small part of this story. And Mario Bava made the film really because he owed back taxes. He was in trouble. He was an incredible filmmaker, though, because he could do great things with very little. And this is what made him special. He made a lot of films, and he always was trying to find something unique that he could present. And so he was always a pioneer in stories and the way films were made, the technical elements of it. And so this is why he's one of Italy's great filmmakers. A good example of what he could do, the film was supposed to be in a forest. It's supposed to have a forest near a lagoon. And they didn't have much money to make the movie, so they were going to make the beach house was going to be Giuseppe Zacariello's. He's the producer of the film. That was going to be his home. And so when Bava shows up to make the movie, there's no trees anywhere. So how are you going to have a forest? Well, he went down to a local florist who was selling these limbs, these branches with leaves on them, and Bava bought them all, brought them to the house, and arranged them in a way so it looked like, outside the house, what happened, it looked like it was a forest. And that's how he was able to capture that essence. He didn't have a tracking methodology, so he used a child's wagon to do his tracking shots. This is the kind of guy he was. He can make great things out of very little. And we sell the movie actually here in PRIMO Magazine. We actually sell it, A Bay of Blood. You can see there, it's very graphic, of course. It's not for everyone. Like I said, if you don't like horror movies, you don't want to watch these films. But if you like horror, if this is what you're interested in, well, then we sell a DVD. You want to get the DVD also, by the way. This is something that people need to realize. Streaming will cut scenes out. When you stream a movie from Netflix and other places, they'll actually cut scenes because everything is politicized nowadays. So they'll cut scenes that they feel like goes against a political perception that they want to utilize. Everything is propagandized nowadays, and so you won't get the original film really unless you buy the DVD. That's why it's important to buy the DVD. That's why it's also important to buy books too, because I'm finding that's the case. That a lot of the stuff that's available for you to read online has scenes cut and other things because they go against today's cancel culture, political correct situation. So this is why you want to get the DVD and to watch it for yourself. And we sell it, and I'll have links to it. It's an entertaining film, and if you like the slasher genre, you really get to see the template of it all. It's well made. The story meanders a little bit in sections, but because of its effectiveness, because of its spectacle, and because of its influence, I made it number 4 in my top 5 films, horror films from Italy. So we have number 5 was Zombie 2, and number 4 is A Bay of Blood. So what is number 3? Number 3 in the top 5 horror films. I wasn't going to name this film, by the way, number 3. But I saw it recently again, and I just am amazed by its horror spectacle. That's the thing about horror. It's shocking. It's unnerving. It pushes the envelope. It goes to the edge of things. Story-wise, it's not necessarily the greatest of stories, but just because of its just spectacle makes it worthwhile viewing. And the title of the film is called Absurd. Absurd. This came out in it was 1980. The film came out, and the reputation it has is quite notorious. And the reason for that was, and what made it a popular film was an interesting situation that occurred. In England, they had passed a law, and that was a big market for Italian horror films, was England. They would make films and exploitation films and distribute them in London and other places. And they passed a law censoring films that were sexually explicit or violent, explicitly violent. And those were banned, basically. You couldn't see films like that in the movie theater. Well, what happened was, at this time, you began to see the rise of VHS tapes, VHS recordings, and video stores began to pop up all over the place. Well, the argument was the law that censored films and that really kept Italian films out of the market in England, that only applied to theatrical releases, not for VHS releases. So the video stores bought a ton of Italian films, erotic films, soft porn films, and horror films, and put it up all on the shelves. Well, the kids loved it. They would go and buy the films and then go back to their homes and watch them. So when the parents came home and they saw what the kids were watching, they were shocked. And they went to the local member of parliament, whoever it was, and asked, why is this happening? Didn't we have a law to stop this from occurring? Well, yeah, the law applies only to theatrical releases, not to video stores. So the British authorities began to raid the video stores, and the video owners and associations thought that was illegal because, again, it didn't fall under the law. So what they then did, what did the British authorities then did, they just made a list of films. Most of them were from Italy. They called it the video nasties. That was the list that it was termed by the press and by people. Just the films that you don't want your kids to watch. They're there at the video store, and these are the list of films that we have. And these are the films that we would normally be banned if they were in the theater. And parents, keep an eye on these films. Make sure your kids don't watch them. Well, this is an alphabetical order. So what was going to be on top of the list? You guessed it, absurd. The Italian film was near the top of the list. And so when they came out with the video nasties there in the newspapers, what have you, and the kids saw it, they don't have much time to read. They read absurd. Wow, I want to see that film because that film was banned. And this is kind of what they did. It's reminiscent of what occurred to me when I was growing up in the 80s. You could see a horror movie and you would tell that to somebody older. Oh, wow, we saw this great horror movie the other day. And he said, oh, that's nothing compared to the horror movies that we had when I was growing up. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And we're like, well, what is this film all about? And that came out, the early 70s. And they would basically tell us that this film was banned. So when we found out that it was banned, the more we wanted to go ahead and see it. That's just the nature of teenagers and kids. And so this film was made by Joe D'Amato. Joe D'Amato directed this film, and he was the cameraman for a lot of the art house films you saw, either made by Italians or made in Italy. He often did the camera work. And then when he had a chance to make films, he immediately went the exploitation route. He wanted to make quasi-porn films and horror films. And he teamed up with George Eastman, Luigi Montefiore. And Luigi Montefiore is almost 7 feet tall. He's this very tall actor, bearded figure, and he wrote the script with D'Amato. And the script basically is about a person who is experimented on by the Catholic Church. They wanted to try and see if they could achieve immortality, and they could through this experimentation of this individual. They inserted a number of medical various serums and things, and so you couldn't kill the guy, but the stuff that they gave him made him insane. So he escaped from this Catholic medical institution, and he goes on a rampage. His name is Mikos Stanopoulos, and he's killing everybody he runs into. But he then goes to he begins to stalk a home. The parents are away, and the woman is a babysitter. This is kind of like Halloween, and you have the girl in the movie. Her name is Katya, and Katya has a spine problem, so she's there in bed. She can't leave the bed too much, and her younger brother. Well, Mikos, played by George Eastman, enters his home and he kills the babysitter, he kills the nurse who's watching Katya. The little boy goes off, her brother, who calls him the boogeyman. Again, this is very much like Halloween. He leaves to get the police, so now it's just this maniac, 7-foot man going against this little girl who's handicapped, and they're going to fight it out. Just not to give it away, but she does win, but the way she wins is quite phenomenal. So this was over-the-top gore. People began to think that maybe Joe D'Amato had replaced Lucio Fulci as the king of gore, but that necessarily didn't happen. I would say if Fulci is the king of gore, Joe D'Amato with George Eastman were the princes of gore. But, the movie's over the top. If you're not interested in horror films, again, I want to warn you that this is a very graphic, violent film. It's not for everyone. Surprisingly entertaining. I don't know what it is. Surprisingly, you can easily go along with this film. So number 3 on my list of the top 5 horror films from Italy is Absurd. So now we go to number 2. Number two came out in 1987, and the title of the film was Stage Fright. And the person who made the film, his name was Michele Soavi, Michael Soavi. And he was one of these guys, he was a kid mostly, when I say kid, he was in his 20s, a young man. And he just found working in horror movies and the technical side. So he assisted Lamberto Bava, he assisted Joe D'Amato, he assisted Dario Argento. And so his time had come, now his time had come basically where he wanted to go ahead and make a film he wanted to direct. And so all of these, to the credit, all these people who made these other films came to his aid and invested and provided him the means to make this movie. And you know, his first time out, he hit it out of the ballpark. It was this is a very entertaining film for horror wise. Great story, and it's right there in the midst of the slasher genre. You know, you can count this among Halloween 2, Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th, that sequel, and I'd put Stage Fright right up there as one of the top slasher films of the 1980s. You know, with Halloween, it's Michael Myers. He's got this William Shatner mask. With Friday the 13th, it's Jason Voorhees. He's got a hockey mask. And then you have Nightmare on Elm Street, of course, Freddy Krueger. He's all got his face all burned up. Well, Stage Fright, the killer, he's got a head, a costume head of an owl. He's wearing that to commit these heinous crimes. And you know, it doesn't take place in a cabin someplace out in the woods or in a nice quaint area of Pasadena, wherever it is, or another town in the Midwest. It takes place in a theater, an old theater at the edge of town. So you get to see all of the things that are used, all the objects that are used to make a theater production work. And basically, the way the story is, you have this director and this producer, and the producer is this money-hungry producer from Central Casting, and the director is just like this tyrannical figure. And he wants to make a play, he wants to make a musical. He's very demanding, and so basically, he locks everybody in this theater until they get the rehearsal right. This is what he's all about. Well, just so happens this maniac has escaped from a nearby asylum, and he's taken refuge inside the theater. Because the doors are locked, and because one of the first people who's killed is the woman who's been given the key by the director in secret, nobody can escape. And so they're at the beck and call of this crazy maniac. And here he is. He's dressed up in an owl head, owl costume, and you know, he's got no shortage of instruments and the theater workshop to work with. We're talking chainsaws and things as he's utilizing, and he goes ahead and he kills pretty much everybody in the theater. Everybody gets it. The actors, the actresses, the director, the producer, and finally it's him versus the female actress. And this is where it goes. But there's some very powerful scenes. One powerful scene was after he, you know, does his damage. You know, we're talking like 3/4 of the way in the film. He sits, the maniac, the killer, sits with this owl, again, this owl head, and he sits there just admiring, you know, the idea of theater. He's sitting there on the stage, and then feathers are flying all around. Wild, crazy scene, but very powerful, I thought. So this was a movie that was made, came out in 1987. And the thing about this film, too, which is also true of a lot of Italian films, is the original title of it was Delirio. And then it became Bloody Bird. And then finally Stage Fright. That's the thing about it. Italian films, when they were released here in the United States, could never really find a title that could capture audiences. So the distributors were always changing titles. This is something that you run into with Italian films. And, you know, putting a title together is not easy, you know, particularly when you think it's easy to put a title together, but to actually put a title of a story, could be an article, and it could be a film in this case, to capture audiences, to get audiences to come and see what you're doing is a lot more difficult than you might imagine. So I can understand why the distributors were always trying to figure out a way to get people to come. So this is number 2 on my list. If you like 80s slasher horror, you're going to love Stage Fright. So that's number 2. And so finally we come to number 1. Number 1 on my list of the top 5 horror films. Let's just give you the list real quick. Number 5, right, was Zombie 2 by Lucio Fulci that came out in 1979. Number 4 was A Bay of Blood, a film that we sell here through PRIMO. And number 3 was number 1 on the Video Nasties list in England. That's what kind of gave it its notoriety, was a film called Absurd, That was by Joe D'Amato, and George Eastman played the lead, the maniac killer. And then number 2 was Stage Fright. Stage Fright was Michele Soavi's quasi masterpiece. His first time making films. They did a pretty good job with Stage Fright. And now number one is not only one of the best horror films from Italy, really one of the best films from Italy in general. It's quite good, and that is Suspiria. That's by Dario Argento. That came out in 1977, and it's celebrated by so many horror aficionados. What can you say about this film? This film is a masterpiece from beginning to end. Dario Argento, he was termed the Italy's version of Hitchcock because he was a pioneer of giallo. He was preeminent in that. He made excellent movies in that genre: suspense, murder mystery, and now came his opportunity to make a horror film. And Suspiria takes place in Munich. It's a ballet academy, and it really is a cover for a coven of witches. And it stars Jessica Harper, plays the American who comes to the ballet academy. Her name is Susie Bannon. And she runs into the 2 elder females in the movie, played by Joan Bennett. Joan Bennett, a big star in Hollywood. She was there as far back as the silent era. And this was her last film. She was also in the horror soap opera that was popular at one point in time, Dark. See if I get the title of it. Dark Passages, I think it was. Maybe I'm wrong about that. But anyway, she was part of that as well. And Alida Valli played in Hitchcock's The Paradigm Case. And then she was in the third Cal Reed's film, Third Man, I want to say. But, she had the look of, she was going to be like another Greta Garbo. I mean, this is what they termed her as. And then she really didn't reach that heights. And then here in the 1970s, I almost didn't recognize her in the film, but she's had a long career in movie making. And so she played one of the witches also. And, Susie Bannion, the American, she's trying to figure out what's happening because girls are dying. They're dying part of, I think, of a sacrificial type thing. And I just remember Joan Bennett, Dark Shadows was the horror soap opera that Joan Bennett was in. I apologize for that. But anyway, Susie Bannion, she's trying to investigate this. And it's there at the academy there in Munich. And you really get to see a side of Bavaria, in Germany. Although this was an Italian film, they did a pretty good job in giving you the locations of Bavaria. But what makes this Suspiria so great is just the way the movie was made. I don't know. It's just a beautifully shot film. Probably one of the most beautiful horror movies. It was the last movie made in Technicolor. The Luciano Tovoli was the cinematographer. He really didn't have much. He did a number of films, but nothing too extensive. But he did a wonderful job in this movie. Like I said, this is the last film made in Technicolor. Giuseppe Bassan was the set decorator. You have all these Art Deco images throughout the film. A lot of incredible colors. Primary colors stand out: reds, blues, all over the place. If you love great filmmaking, this is it for you. The title came from the Thomas de Quincey thesis, Suspiria de Profundis, and he basically said that horror came about by the environments that we were in. De Quincey, he was one who wrote a book called Confessions of an Opium Eater. And so Dario Argento used that as a template to try the Suspiria de Profundis to make the movie Suspiria. This is part of his Three Mothers trilogy. He made Inferno, and then he made another film later on. He really didn't capture the success that he did in Suspiria, but the music is done by the Italian techno rock band Goblin. What can I say about this film? This is just an incredible film from beginning to end. The remake that they made in the 2000 late around 2018, 2019, I think. I didn't like it at all. I didn't think that was nearly as good as the original. Nowhere near it. I would rank Suspiria as one of the top 5 horror films in history. It's that good, and one of the top films from Italy. Dario Argento. He just kind of fell off after a while. He did make films as good as he did prior to 1985, and so afterwards he just kind of drifted along. He did make movies. He was still active, but it just wasn't the same as what he did before. He's 85 years old now, so maybe he can be a part of something, a film of some sort. Maybe he can do another film if that's the case. But this is really his best, and this is his masterpiece, and that's why I recommend it. So there you have it, the top 5 horror films from Italy. Zombie 2, number 5. A Bay of Blood is number 4. Number 3 is Absurd. And number 2 is Stage Fright. And number 1 is Suspiria. There you go. Italy continues to make great films, special films, and they've been a main filmmaking place for all the genres that are out there, and horror is one of them. So if you're interested in Italian horror, we do sell, again, A Bay of Blood from PRIMO, and we also sell the wonderful Italian Horror Cinema, which is a book we have also available. You can buy that as well. Happy Halloween to you. Happy Halloween to everybody. This is such a fun holiday, and I wish you the best. I hope all your kids enjoy themselves going out and about, trick-or-treating. It's always fun. And like I said, when you put them to bed, put them to sleep, you get all done with the candy, you want to watch a nice horror movie, maybe want to give Italy a chance and watch one of the films I recommended. And please subscribe to our channel. If you like this video, please like it. Please share it. And please comment about it. What do you think was your favorite films from Italy in the horror genre? Please let me know. I'm always happy to read your comments. So until then, I want to wish you all a happy Halloween, October 31st. Thank you for tuning in, and I look forward to more videos and coming to you again very soon. Until then, happy Halloween. Have a great weekend. Thank you.